everybody. Welcome to Hyperspace on PSN Radio. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. We'll be opening the phone lines in hour 2. If you'd like to call in and ask a question, you can do so at 786-245-8127. And my special guests this evening are Nancy, Hopkins, and Walt Silva. And since let me read you Nancy's bio first. Since the assassination of President Kennedy when she was 15, Nancy has been on a quest to understand reality. The assassination made it obvious reality was not what she had been taught to understand it was. The planners of the assassination did not anticipate the event would radicalize an entire generation of children who grew up to challenge the existing status quo. Nancy's journey has been compiled in the nonfiction Cosmic Reality. It is really 2 books under one cover, and each describe her journey as well as the uncovered secrets leading to the rules of cosmic reality. The first rule of cosmic reality is, quote, reality is what you think it is, unquote. And the second rule is, quote, majority rules, unquote. The third rule is anyone in control of a given reality will keep everyone else from knowing 1 and 2. And during writing of Cosmic Reality, Nancy was led to conclude that for humanity to survive, we had to become subservient to the creator God of this biosphere we call Earth. Nancy calls this creator God Gaia, believing the ancient word for Mother Earth is an energetic power word. Realization of the need to believe in Gaia led to commitment. 6 months later, Gaia countered with the gift of Shungite. It also led to a new mission to get Shungite to the masses. And Shungite's ability to hijack the mind-screwing physical body, destroying electromagnetic Wi-Fi system controlling present reality is just too sweet a solution. When Shungite is introduced, damaging EM and Wi-Fi fields are changed to healing and enlightening signals. This is an undisputed scientific observation. But Nancy takes it further. She has realized that Shungite's proven healing properties beyond protection from harmful radiation is intensified by energy emitted by those believing Shungite is Gaia's ultimate weapon to regain control over the planet. The more people believe in Shungite, the stronger it becomes, and in turn, the stronger Gaia becomes. The current mission is simple: get Shungite to the masses and create an alternative reality. Nancy believes this is just what is happening, and her website is cosmicreality.net. And Walt Silva is a scientist and experimenter, seeing the connections and relationships between things mostly seen and unseen by others. After more than 30 years of studying and practicing spiritual disciplines, Walt can see how the spiritual, the mental, and the physical affect each other. It is a non-stop, reciprocal relationship. Always following the desire to help, he has developed machines, devices, and healing modalities to help family and friends. And it is the desire that led Walt to research and find ways to help others by changing and healing the energies around us. His website is www.newparadigmtools.net. And please welcome Nancy and Walt to the show this evening. Hello there.
Hello there. Good evening.
Good evening and welcome. It's great to have you on board.
Great to be here.
Let me know when you're ready, Solaris.
Oh, I am. We're ready to roll. We're here live. So
for the other thing, for the experiment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to have an experiment going on tonight. That's right. I don't know if we'll inform the listeners or not, but yes, anytime you can roll.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do want to touch base with both of you now. When I ask a question, feel free to chime in either one. But I'd like to ask the listeners, or actually, I'd like to ask you all how you all met with the Shungite. How did you encounter each other?
I was with Wolf Spirit Radio as a host on their Sunday alternative shows, and I was also a guest on JP's. He has 2 radio shows. I was on a couple of his shows, and then I got introduced to Shungite, and so on one of his shows I started talking about it, and then Jay got involved in it, and so we did a number of shows that were very much into the sciences, and because Jay loves science and knows a tremendous amount also. So we were sharing what we knew, and then Walt got somebody turned him on to the tape of one of our shows, and I get a posting in Facebook on my page, and somebody, it may have been Jay, said, "Have you seen this?" And it's this guy Walt Silva talking about Shungite and making a resonator, and I'm going like, who the hell is this guy? I need to know who he is. And pretty soon I think I found him on Facebook or something, but we connected, and that was how it was. It was, what can I tell you?
It's magic in motion. I'll tell you what, you two make a great chemistry and combination. There's no doubt about it. So
well, let me just finish that thought, because in reality, you asked me how we got together. Well, that was the 3D reason for us getting together. But there was a much more intense getting together, because when I started playing with the Shungite, I was seeing all sorts of things in my head about the energies. I can virtually remote view the quantum area. And I was watching this stuff do just this magical things. And I said to Gaia, Gaia, you need to send me somebody who can translate what I got in my head, the pictures I got in my head, into something real. And also because of the book, Cosmic Reality, as I was writing that, I realized that Gaia herself goes through all of these various different changes in her consciousness level. And she goes from a molten gas to a molten rock to bringing in the various degrees of life into the planet one after the other. And she's changing her conscious level. And I understood that the next level that human beings would have to jump to, as she jumped to the new level, because we're all connected, was that of shamanistic understanding. And by that, it's a very complicated, we all, I think the three of us at least know, many of our listeners would understand that. It's the ability to contain your own identity and your own feeling of borders, and yet take excursions into realities that the average person would just say is nonsense. Mm-hmm. They're very real places, and that's where we have to go. We have to be able to allow our minds to expand. And so I said to Gaia, Gaia, I need somebody that understands shamanistic minds, consciousness. And then the third thing I asked for was somebody to fix my computer, because my computer was giving me such grief. And she gave me Walt Silva that fulfilled all of those very desperate needs, in my opinion.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, there's always the backstory, so to speak, of how two people come together. Because it always, you can't have manifestation without thought. And the thought that manifested was my needs to be able to fulfill my mission to her, to be subservient to her needs. I needed needs, and she fulfilled them in one person. So that's the magic of aligning yourself with somebody who is, I get people that get all freaked out because they think, oh, I'm talking about some other God. Yes, I'm talking about another God. There is a source God. But, you limit God if you think that God cannot create a creator God. Mm-hmm. And for the biosphere of Earth, that creator God, I choose to call Gaia. And so that's basically where it all started, was me saying, no, she's the boss. I can't possibly do anything without her. And if we align with her, then we have a chance of winning. Mm-hmm. If we don't, we're screwed.
Right, yeah, because I would say that the biosphere of the Earth is in jeopardy to some degree. Wouldn't you all agree on that?
Oh, yes, but only because we haven't understood. I mean, it really comes down to the concept of dominion. Mm-hmm. And there's rules and regulations in the galaxy that you only kind of get a glimpse of, and really have to pay attention to details to get the full ramifications of. What the problem was that for all practical purposes, we had left Earth like a garbage pit, and anybody was welcome to it. Nobody was tending it. There was nobody that had claimed dominion. And so I was put into a situation where I understood that you have to claim dominion in order to be able to access the real help that you can get from the outside forces of, yes, ETs. But an ET does have the responsibility to of the first directive, which is do not interfere in somebody else's sandbox unless you're asked. Right. So that's where it came down to, was and this is very, it's like one of those secret things, but every single one of us is a representative of humanity, every one of us. And if you choose to understand the full ramifications of that position and to take an active part to say, yes, I'm standing up for humanity, and I'm saying that I am going to claim dominion over this planet. No more of this taking from us. This is our planet, and we are going to work together to fix our planet. Once you do that, then, it's really a cakewalk. Because you're not going to overplay Gaia. I think that the dark side made a tremendous error in saying Gaia doesn't exist. That's the card they played. And in my opinion, that was the card that doomed him.
Right. And there seems to be a war on the divine feminine also, which, in my opinion, connects to the Gaia frequency to some degree, the great mother energy. I was going to ask you, Walt, so how did you get involved in creating these incredible devices? And, of course, at what point in the continuum did you become this shamanistic being? Were you always shamanistic as a child?
No. I guess the one skill that I always had that is necessary for you to go into that type of consciousness is the ability to dream while you're awake, daydreaming. Reality made no sense to me. I didn't understand why people behave the way they did. I didn't understand why children behave the way they did. So 90% of the time I lived in my own world of my own creation where I had, my own family and my own friends, and it was never on Earth. But that let me do a lot. It gave me the skills necessary to do consciousness shifts where you shift from one level to another. But no, the shamanistic thing came much later on because back in 2003, 2004, I started reading a lot on the work of Dr. Wilhelm Reich, who coined the term orgon for what's been known in the ancient past as ether, or prana, or chi, which is nothing less than the life force of all living things. And the thing that he did a lot of work in research was how the organ, when exposed to EMF fields, high frequency fields, it gets overexcited, and then it becomes dead. It becomes stagnant. And when it becomes stagnant, it induces all kinds of health conditions, negative health conditions on humans. If you remember the days, now everybody has a flat panel display on their computer, but if you remember the days where it was, wherever you go, it was CRTs all over the place. Mm-hmm. People sitting in front of the computer, within the first hour, either their eyes were burning, or they had a headache, or their joints were aching, or their nose would get dry, or their mouth would get dry, and all of this is there's nothing wrong with you physically. It's the consequence of the dead organ around the CRT, because the CRT is an electron cannon. You're sitting in front of it, and there's a cannon behind the screen shooting electrons at you. Mm-hmm. So my first interest, Dr. Wilhelm Reich never researched. He never followed the line of thought, okay, if organ becomes dead, or it becomes, he had different labels for them. One was DOR, which is deadly organ radiation. Another one is Oranur, which is what happens in the presence of radioactive materials. But he never actually dug deep into, okay, how do we get it back to its healthy state? He never followed those lines. He was primarily an observer and experimenter up to a level. So I started researching this subject. Okay, if it's energy, and energy can be transmuted, we do that all the time. There's got to be a way to make sick, stagnant organ back into healthy organ, and that's how I started finding out about this grassroots movement across the country. There's a gentleman who lives in Idaho by the name of Don Croft, and a lot of people credit him with starting this movement called gifting, which is where they made this thing called Orgonite, which is nothing more than a mixture of resin and metal filings. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is, in the subject of organ, the living energy, Reich discovered that metals attract and project organ. They're constantly doing that, moving it. And organic materials, anything of an organic nature, attracts it and stores it. So a gentleman by the name of Carl Vance did an experiment where he mixed the two. He just took resin and put in filings. And what he discovered is that it created the attraction of the resin and the repulsion of the metal, created a pulsing effect, and that made stagnant organ back into healthy organ. So they went one step further and found that by putting these little cups of this mixture in the proximity nearby, as near as possible, of cell phone towers, it would start neutralizing the field of negative orgon around cell phone towers, because there were articles at the time claiming that the true hidden technology behind cell phone towers was ELF, extremely low frequency emissions. And the articles claim that with these extremely low frequency emissions, they could control the masses of the population. I mean, one transmission could make you panicky, another one can make you listless, another one can make you depressed. So they were claiming that that's why the towers were cropping up. You know, they were growing as fast as bamboo all over the country. You turn around and there's another tower. You see a water tank, oh, there's the cell phone emitters on the water tank. So the people were going around the country throwing these cups of Orgonite near the cell phone towers to neutralize, because in order for the towers to function correctly, they have to be surrounded by a field of dead orgon. Otherwise, the transmission doesn't have much effect. So that's what they did. But further research and investigation into the subject, I found that it actually has a limited life. Orgonite will only pulse so much, and then it becomes depleted because it gets saturated. So practitioners and users of Orgonite would say, okay, you need to put it up expose it to the sunlight, so the sunlight will, detoxify the Orgonite, and then it'll go back and you can use it. And I'm thinking, this is really inefficient. Especially, I mean, I'm in Minnesota. I mean, how many sunny days do we see on any given winter season?
Right.
So, looking further, okay, how can I make my Orgonite not get depleted and always be energized? And I came across the work of Slim Sperling. So I read the book written about him. I studied the video that he put out, and I found what is it that turns on his devices. So I started combining his technology with the Orgonite, and the result is a device that doesn't deplete and is constantly moving the orgon. You don't have to expose it to the sunlight. So at this moment that I'm doing this, one of the gentlemen who bought a device from me turns out to be, at the time he was going through several shamanic workshops. He's a student of Michael Harner, who does workshops all over the place. And in conversations with him, he says, have you ever tried? And I said, well, I don't know. You didn't know what to do. So he sent me an audio clip of drumming, and he says, well, lie back or recline and cover your eyes and listen to this and just let yourself go and just describe to me what you see. So he would give me these little pieces of homework where he would say, okay, now do this, and then report back, what do you see? So as I would report back, he would say, you've done this in other lives, haven't you? Because you're very natural at this, and I don't know what's right or wrong on this. I can only report what I'm experiencing. So once I got into the habit of this, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't do what he does because he offers all these psychic services of like entity possession releasement and all of these fancy things that he's learned in the workshops. I said, I haven't gone to a workshop, so I have no idea how he's doing what he's doing. But it opened the door for me. Okay, if I can do the journey and people are interested in these energy devices, I have no excuse for not talking to the people's guides and asking them, okay, what does your person need? And that's how the ball got started with that. And as people gave their permission, I would use the journey to visit with their guides and ask them questions. And yes, that's how very many customized devices came around, because they would give me the recipe. So nothing that's on my website I can say, oh yeah, this is the fruit of my fantastic inspiration because I'm so smart. And no, it's a total lie. Everything that's on my website is born from either a vision or a recipe from guides.
Awesome. And I can vouch that you have an incredible energy and a very nice, I would say very genuine contact to your guides and mine and whoever else you're accessing. You have quite a gift. I was going to ask you, what turns on these devices? What exactly, can you elaborate insofar as what it is?
Oh, yeah, it's not that complicated. Okay. Remember I mentioned that Dr. Reich found that metals attract and repel orgone. So if you have a piece of wire that's metallic, regardless of what metal it is, if it's iron, aluminum, copper, one end of the wire will be positive and the other end will be negative, meaning that in one end it will be pulling in orgone from the ambient, from the surroundings, and the other end will be projecting orgone outside of itself. So they have an orgone polarity. And in the case of copper, if you take a length of copper wire, you have one positive end, one negative end. And if you fold it over to make a ring and you solder it with silver solder, the silver is what makes the difference. The silver, the bimetal interaction between the silver and the copper create a difference of potential, and it turns it on. So now the orgone, instead of flowing outside of the wire, is actually flowing inside of the wire at the speed of electricity.
Excellent.
And it turns it on. And that's how, but here's the thing, is that now you've turned it into a ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
But each face of, because the ring is creating a flat plane, the space inside the ring is considered a flat plane. One face of this ring will be positive, the other face will be negative. In fact, Sperling in his experiments, because he was his own guinea pig, almost gave himself a heart attack. Because he was reclining in his easy chair and he put the ring on his chest, but he put the negative side down.
Oh.
And he started getting major palpitations. He had to get up and toss the ring away.
Oh, gee. Wow.
So that's why he had to come up with that's why you see them in the pictures that it's twisted wire.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is now with the twisted wire rings, both faces are positive. So you don't have the possibility of that negative effect.
Excellent.
So you have to be you have to dowse. You don't have another choice, because dowsing is the only way to detect the orgone polarity. There's no electronic equipment made as of yet to do that detection, unless you're using, I don't know, Kirlian camera or something of that nature.
Right. And what do you use as a dowsing material?
I use both L rods and I use pendulum.
Excellent. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah. How incredible. And then whereabouts in the house would you suggest people place Orgonite?
Well, it depends on the space and what you're trying to achieve. Because if it's like the type stuff that I do that never needs clearing, it's always good to douse the space as to where it should be, because there are always geopathic lines crisscrossing a house, and when the lines have polarity, some lines are positive, some lines are negative, and unfortunately when two negative lines cross each other, they produce a negative vortex. And if you have that inside a house or in the proximity of a house, you will have a family with lots and lots of problems, whether it be health problems affecting the members of the family or financial problems or something. But it's like like being star-crossed, where everything goes wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's one of those things that can be addressed successfully with the Orgonite, because it'll change the spin of that. But then comes the new player into this whole energy field, which is Shungite, and once you combine Shungite and Orgonite, it's like the sky's the limit. There's like practically nothing that you can't do because of the nature of the Shungite.
I love the Shungite. Yeah.
Because you see, the Orgonite, by its very nature, works within the spectrum of orgone. Like any other energy form, orgone has a spectrum. So you have very, very low, very dense orgone, which is in the red part of the spectrum, and you have very high frequency, very subtle orgone up in the ultraviolet spectrum. Just like any other form of energy, it does have density and it has spectrum. Mm-hmm. But that's the limit of Orgonite. This is where it functions. Shungite does not have this limitation. Shungite works throughout the dimensions because of that fullerene geometry that it has. It is not limited to the etheric spectrum. That's why Shungite works on the 3D physical spectrum, affecting EMF, high frequency emissions. It works on the etheric spectrum, and as I've told people, when you do a shamanic journey, because you're seeing a higher dimension of reality, many times, for example, something that here in our normal dimension looks like an herb, for example, when you're in the higher dimension, it doesn't look like an herb. It looks like a little elf or a little gnome, because you're seeing the higher dimensional expression of that life form. And the same thing happens with Orgon. Orgon is, the Shungite. You have the physical expression of Shungite in our dimension, which looks like coal, and we know it has this fullerene molecule. But in the higher dimension, it looks like a black lion with golden eyes. It has sentience. It has an expression, a life expression, which to me it looks like this. I don't know, maybe someone else doing a shamanic journey sees it different. So it does work. It continues its energy work in higher dimensions as well as low dimensions.
That's fascinating. Can I just ask you real quick, and I want Nancy to chime in too, but the black lion with the golden eyes, does that have any resonance or connection to maybe the ancient ancient Egyptian timelines or anything like that?
I don't know. I haven't asked. I guess I should do a journey and ask.
I was going to say, that seems really incredible. That's fascinating. And also, I wanted to elaborate more on the history of Shungite insofar as where it comes from and how old is it. And Nancy, chime in anytime you want to.
That's Nancy's expertise.
I could talk to both of you for like hours and hours. So,
well, the age of Shungite is estimated to be between 2 and 4 billion years.
Yeah, it's ancient.
Where it's located, first off, you'll hear Shungite being, there's Canadian Shungite and there's only one Shungite in the world. And it's Shungite because of the village Shunga, which is in Karelia, which is one of the federations of Russia. It's just to the east of Finland. The deposit is about 1,000 kilometers square, and it goes down to about 400 feet. So there's two stories as to how it could have got there. The first one is typical science, which says that there were a tremendous number of microorganisms and this is microorganisms. I mean, they're describing the same thing that happens with oil, but they always at least started out with vegetable. But the reason they have to go all the way back to a microorganism is because of the obvious age of at least 2 billion years. And what they say about this area is that this is the seed of life. This is where things started up, because they're seeing in the geology, in the rocks, that life occurred here in Karelia before it occurred elsewhere. So they're acknowledging that this area of Shungite is the area where life probably started. But then they go through this weird thing about microorganisms turning into gunk that turned into oil, that turned into coal, it doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is that something came colliding into Earth, carrying life with it, carrying the blueprint of life, and that it extended out, and that is that field of Shungite. And the reason that all of this happened was because of the fullerene. And the fullerene, it looks like a soccer ball. And it actually is like 2 geodesic domes, which is just a geometric figure that's encased in the soccer ball. But it's a geometric shape that is used for building and was promoted by Buckminster Fuller. Therefore, you hear the word fullerene, or sometimes buckyball. Right. But it's only in the Shungite, real Shungite, where you get a range of, in the raw stuff, not the elite. There's two versions. One is, I call it raw. Others will just call it, plain Shungite. There's an elite that is crystalline, almost like mica, and very brittle, very compact, and that has up to 90% fullerenes. The raw stuff, the stuff that looks like coal that we mostly work with, is anywhere between 35 and 60% fullerenes. Mm-hmm. The stuff that they're toting is Shungite from the Ukraine and Kazakhstan and Canada is like 5% fullerenes. So, yeah, it might technically have a fullerene in it, but how many pounds or tons of it are you going to have to get before you get the one molecule that's a fullerene? Mm-hmm. So right. Don't waste your time if you're trying for the magic, because the magic is in the fullerene, and the only place you can get it is from Karelia. We absolutely certify our stuff. Not only do I have vendors that basically go to the mine to get it, but once we get it here, we test it, because one of the odd things about Shungite, first off, Shungite chemically is very similar to coal, but it doesn't burn, and it's not susceptible to pressures like coal is. And the other thing is that you can run a current through it.
Right.
So if you just take a normal electric meter and you just test it to see if it's taking a current through it, to know, basically that you got Shungite first off. So that's basically where it is. It's been known to be a healer. Peter the Great had a military spa created there for his soldiers. The odd thing about it from the get-go was the waters in the area, and there's a huge lake. It's like the third largest lake in Europe, and it is absolutely pristine. I mean, they get their water by putting a pipe in it and sucking. They don't have to treat it at all. It's absolutely pristine. And so the waters there were also known to be healing. They started a spa that was for children with asthma and other lung problems. And they would basically just put these pieces of Shungite into the humidifying thing. I forget what they call it, that pushes the air out.
Like nebulizer or something?
Nebulizer type of thing. But they just put water and they, heat it up so it comes out as steam. And so it's carrying the Shungite energy. But, they don't know what it's doing, but they know they got 100% cure rate in children. And so and when I found it, now how I found it is another magical story, in that I was an electronic warfare officer, and I understood way back in the 70s the dangers of these dang things. And so when I'm on Facebook was opened, and it started ding, 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 and I go over there, and they're all screaming about this EMF stuff. And by then I had been trying to get people interested for 40 years, and I was kind of over it. And so I just was busy. I said, Gaia, please give me something that I can give them. And I went about my business, and within an hour, I'm suddenly on a website, and I'm going, how did I get here? And it was a discussion of how the Soviet military was using a substance called Shungite in order to protect their electrical or their battle equipment, the electrical and electronics equipment, from EMF pulse. And being an electronic warfare officer, this was very significant to me. And I went, whoa, what is this stuff? And so I went and I looked it up, and sure enough, it was being used pretty extensively to create EMF clear houses. In other words, that somehow or another, if you put Shungite paint or you use slabs of Shungite in a room, you wouldn't get any EMF.
Right, and Nancy, we're going to head for a break, everybody. Hold that thought. We'll be right back, everybody, here at PSN Radio. This is Hyperspace. I'm Solaris BlueRaven. My special guests are Walt Silva and Nancy Hopkins.